Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 5th annual North Carolina State Capitol Day hosted by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Just like those GIFs on the slide say, today is the day, and welcome to the team. We are so excited that you've chosen to dedicate your Monday night to learning about suicide prevention and how to advocate for legislation that reflects suicide prevention and saving lives. So our agenda for this meeting is listed on the slide, but I'm going to just review it for you guys. First, we'll have a little welcome to the AFSP. Then the mental health director at North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services will cover suicide facts and figures for both North Carolina and the U.S. After that, we'll talk Advocacy 101 with our chapter's Public Policy Committee chair. Then a member of the General Assembly is going to cover red flag legislation and how to build relationships with your elected officials. After that, we'll have our governmental consultant cover policy priorities. And the very last part of the presentation before questions and answers, I will help you guys with how to take action. Some of our speakers tonight include myself. I'm the North Carolina Associate Area Director for AFSP. We also have Victor Armstrong, who serves the state as the Department of Health and Human Services Director of the North Carolina Division of Mental Health, Developmental Disabilities, and Substance Abuse Services, and works tirelessly to better the mental health of North Carolinians. Kenya Proctor is our helpful and dedicated Public Policy Committee Chair. We have Representative Marcia Morey, who is a member of the North Carolina House of Representatives, and fun fact, she has competed in the Olympics. Super cool. Last, we've got Rob Lemay, who serves as our chapter's lobbyist and is the gears behind our advocacy efforts. Thanks to all of you for sharing your knowledge and passion with us tonight. So we wanted to give a little shout out to the North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. He wanted to participate in tonight's event, however, a conflict came up, but we're still very appreciative of the fact that he is so passionate about ending suicide. Welcome to the AFSP and our 5th annual State Capitol Day. In this picture, you can see our last in-person State Capitol Day, which unfortunately took place in 2019. It's been a while. We can't believe it's been so long, and we absolutely cannot wait until we're able to gather in person to meet with our elected officials. Advocacy is one of 4 main strategies of AFSP because we understand how crucial it is to create laws that will protect and save lives. We have both a national policy team that's up in DC, and a state public policy committee. If at the end of this presentation you're interested in joining the North Carolina Public Policy Committee, please let me know. We would love to get you involved more. The more feet on the ground and the more amplified our voices are, the more change we will see. Next, we'll hear about some suicide facts and figures from Victor Armstrong.
In 2019, we lost 48,344 Americans to suicide. Suicide is currently the second leading cause of death for those aged 10 to 34 here in the United States, and the 4th leading cause of death for those aged 35 to 54, and currently ranks 10th in overall deaths. In 2019, 36.5% of those who died by suicide were 55 or older, and it's estimated that for every suicide death, there are an additional 25 attempts, totaling over 1 million suicide attempts per year in our country. North Carolina currently ranks in the lower third of states in terms of suicide death, but we all know that even one suicide is too many. Here in North Carolina in 2019, we lost 1,358 North Carolinians to suicide. Suicide is currently the second leading cause of death for those aged 10 to 34 in North Carolina, and the 4th leading cause of death for those aged 35 to 54, and currently ranks 11th in overall deaths.
Now let's review some Advocacy 101 with Kenya Proctor.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this so important topic. I'm talking about advocacy. So you can make a difference when you advocate for issues that you care about, those things that are important to you. As field advocates, We influence our legislators at the federal and the state level. And in 2020, our field advocates engaged lawmakers across our country to see over 75 state suicide prevention and mental health bills become law. So yes, there is work to be done, and we are out boots on the ground doing it. One of the things that I am most proud of is the work that we did to make an impact in the crisis line. We went and advocated. We asked Congress to give us $1.6 billion to study the feasibility of changing the telephone number from a 1-800 number to a 3-digit number, because we wanted people to realize that suicide prevention is not something that's way out there, but it truly is a health problem. Just like we think about our physical health, we have to think about our mental health. So we were able to engage them to do that. And not only did they study the feasibility, but they voted to change the number. So we are so proud of that. That is one of the biggest things that we've done. And I actually got to participate in that. So where do our legislations come from? Our legislators, many of them have personal experiences, interests, or personal experience with suicide. Either they themselves have struggled with thoughts of suicide, or someone they know and love has struggled with thoughts of suicide, or maybe have even ended their lives by suicide. Their constituents, legislators want to know what issues matter to you, their constituents. They want to know, the people who put them in office, what matters to them, what they care about. And then organizations, many like AFSP, we produce model policies for legislators to use as a template when they're writing the legislation. So that's where the legislation comes from. So how a bill becomes law. Well, I think back to when I was a kid, Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. Well, it starts in the House. A bill is introduced, the committee hears it, and there's an action on the floor, and then moves to the other house where they have committee hearings and action on the floor. And then finally, if the bill is signed and it's passed, it's signed, allows the bill to become a law without a signature. And there's also a veto power that our governor has. So that's how the bill becomes a law. So connecting with lawmakers, there's 3 key steps when we interact with our lawmakers. One, the first thing that we want to do is introduce ourselves and share with them our connection to the cause. That is one of the biggest things that we can do. I know when I started with public policy, I was so intimidated because there were so many things that I did not know. And what I realized is that when I went in to speak with my legislator, what they really wanted to know was, who was I? Was I one of their constituents? And why was this important to me? So sharing your connection with suicide is so key. Then offer to be that resource. We have knowledge and information that they don't have. So we want to be that resource for them. We want them to reach out to us so that we can share that information with them, and then follow through on that promise. If they reach out to you, then yes, absolutely. You want to make sure that you're following along and answering any questions that they might have. And you may not know all of the answers to the questions that they ask, but you do know someone who does know. We utilize our AFSP chapter, the public policy officer, is a resource as well. And if we don't know something here, boots on the ground in North Carolina, we reach out to our public policy in DC. So becoming a resource, this is something that is year round. Yes, we are doing our state day today, giving you information to equip you to go and speak with your legislators, but this isn't something that just happens today or in this month. This is a year round thing that we do. So we want to make sure that you know how you can become a resource. One, sending out emails, engaging on social media, making one-on-one visits virtually with your local and capital offices, attending town hall and committee meetings, subscribing to your legislators' newsletters, and testifying at hearings, whether in writing or verbally, are all ways that you can become a resource. So the North Carolina legislator, our state legislator website, we search and you can track legislation, identify sponsors of the suicide prevention and mental health legislation that's out there, identify your own legislators. That is so key, knowing who you put in office and where to find them, what's their contact information, at the state capitol in their legislative offices in Raleigh, as well as in your local area, and not just the ones that are at our state capitol, but you also want to know who's going to be who's your legislator in DC as well. You want to learn about the legislative process, how a bill becomes law, and then we have the website on the slide for our North Carolina General Assembly. So AFSP resources, I kid you not, we have some of the best resources available. So you can always go to the chapter staff, North Carolina at afsp.org. We have our lobbyist who's awesome, Rob Lemay. He is a wealth of knowledge, so you want to make sure that you have his contact information. There's webinars and sample meeting videos that you can utilize when you're preparing to speak to your legislator. Issue briefs, the priorities that we have, you can find those at afsp.org /priorities. Bill tracking, again, afsp.org /action center. And that is so key because they will send you emails that we need to take action on. And it is simple as 7 clicks. People say, I don't have time to do it. I kid you not, there is time to do it. And then of course, our fact sheets, the statistics that you heard Victor speak about. We have sheets on those so that you can be equipped with the information that you need to share with your legislator.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Rob Lemay. As you heard, I'm the AFSP lobbyist, and it's my sincere pleasure to introduce you to Marcia. Marcia and I have known each other, I don't know what, since you got elected to the General Assembly, even before that when we lived in Durham. So it's great to have you represented. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day for us. Representative Moore, for those of you who don't know, spent 18 years as a district court judge and an additional 5 years as a chief district court judge. She's also the former executive director of the Governor's Crime Commission. She was appointed to the North Carolina General Assembly, to the House of Representatives, to represent the good people of Durham, North Carolina in 2017. And then she's been reelected since in 2018 and 2020. And yes, I have to say it, she is a former Olympic athlete. She represented represented us in Montreal in 1976. And she was the captain of the U.S. Olympic swim team. And she is I didn't know this about you. She is the holder of no less than 7 national titles. And your forte, as I understand it, was the breaststroke. So, but more importantly to our conversation today, Representative Moore is going to talk a little bit about how to, from a legislator's perspective, about how to build a relationship with your legislator. And is also going to talk about something called red flag legislation, which is a really important part of the AFSP policy agenda, particularly as it relates to gun safety and trying to get guns out of the hands of folks who are having behavioral health crises. Because as so many of you know, the combination of handguns and behavioral health issues often results in tragedy, and we're trying to bend that curve some. And with Representative Moore's leadership, we'll get there, I hope. So, without further ado, Representative Moore, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rob. Hi, everyone. I wish I could see more of your faces. Start your videos. Let's see who's out there. Thank you. Hey. We got some brave people talking to a legislator. Oh, that's beautiful. Thanks. It really helps. I appreciate Kenya did such a great job on contacting your representative, advocating your senator, representative, or people in Congress. And it is so important. We can't do it alone. We can't have an idea and just try and convince our colleagues and get a bill in committee and heard and passed. You know, they want to hear from individuals, and especially individual stories. That's what really matters, and have passion about something, and especially as something trying to prevent suicide. I think every one of you are on this Zoom call for a reason, and I'm guessing you've been impacted yourselves. I know I have in my family, and I have friends. I was counting today 5 5 people that I have known, I have loved, and lost them to suicide. And that doesn't count having been a judge and then calling up someone's name in a family court situation or a criminal court situation and in juvenile court, and to be told by the prosecutor that person died the day before of suicide. So it affects us all, there is no discrimination when it comes to trying to help prevent suicide and mourning the people we have lost. So my heart goes out to all of you that are here, and I'm very, very passionate about it. And there isn't one right answer. What Rob said and what I did right after the Parkland shooting in Florida, which was on Valentine's Day in 2018, several days later, I introduced what we call the red flag law, or it's also known as extreme risk protective order. It's similar to domestic violence protective order, but what it says is a family member or a law enforcement official can petition a judge if there has been someone that's made a credible threat to harm themselves or to harm someone else. And so a person or law enforcement would go to the clerk of court, they would fill out a form just like domestic violence, saying exactly what information you personally know, that this person has a firearm, that you're very worried about their mental state, you're worried about their behavior has changed, something's happened, and you know they have access to a firearm. So a judge would read that, they would talk to who's ever making the petition, and if you found credible evidence that you need to enter an ex parte, meaning you right then and there would enter an order saying the person named in this petition, law enforcement should go take their gun or guns and summons them to come to court within usually 10 days and give full right to a hearing. So the person who owned the gun, who made the threat of harm, would be able to come to court, tell the judge, I was kidding, I'm not suicidal, I'm not homicidal, or I don't have a gun, whatever they say to the judge. You hear both sides of it. And if judge finds there is credible risk of suicide, that there's credible risk of a homicide, the judge can order that gun be removed from the person for up to 1 year. So it's a temporary order. It could be extended maybe for an additional year. So this is the red flag law that I introduced. Almost every Democrat in our caucus signed on. But what happened once it was introduced, the speaker has the right to send it to a committee. And it was sent to our rules committee where it was never brought up. So we never had a hearing. We never had the ability in a committee to vote on it, to hear from experts why it's so important, to hear why so many other states have passed similar laws by Republicans, by Democrats. It's not a partisan issue, but it never came out of committee. We got a lot of good press on it. And last year I had several Republicans come up and say, I'm kind of interested in this now. Let's talk about it. So I was starting to see more interest come up, which I was pleased about. I'm not going to give up. We're going to try again. But as you may know, the culture around guns has really changed. And it's a very tough battle to get gun safety laws. Just last week in the State House, we heard 3 bills to expand the rights of gun owners to carry guns into churches where there's school activities, the right to carry concealed in these places of worship, the right for emergency medical workers, EMS workers, to carry a gun when they come onto a crime scene. I argued against it, that their job is to save lives. The police are there to protect others and clear scenes. But these laws, Second Amendment rights, are kind of dictating where the atmosphere is right now. I want gun safety. Every gun death is preventable. Every death by suicide with a gun is preventable. And there are other ideas. Safe storage laws, I think, have a lot of support. North Carolina needs a better safe storage law. If you own a gun, you're responsible to keep it safe, keep it out of the hands of children. So you all are advocates. You are the ones that can push this agenda. I can't do it alone. My colleagues can't do it alone. The advocacy, the coming to the General Assembly, and just simply knocking on doors and talking, it makes all the difference in the world. And they may say, are you my constituent? Meaning like in Durham, do you live in Durham? I don't care where you live. We represent North Carolina. The picture from 2019 when you all came the last time, that was a wonderful day. I mean, to meet some of you, to hear stories was very moving. And we're going to be opening up, I think, within a few months to have people come back in. We already have people who feel comfortable and safe wearing masks coming in and talking to their senators or representatives. That personal touch makes a big difference. Writing emails makes a big difference. We get a lot of emails from all these lobbying groups, and we read them. Grassroots North Carolina sends out emails every day. Don't take away my rights to have a gun. Don't take away, gun ownership issues. So I think there are a lot of us that are sensible. We simply want to keep people safe. There are many ways to do it. I would love to hear from you. Know we have your support in any measures that would help prevent suicide. But you all are the heroes, and you are who we work for. We have kids come in a lot talking about gun safety laws, and they came when I introduced the red flag bill 2 years ago. They were all over the place. They were wearing, orange flags, talking about these red flag laws, and did a fantastic job. I think one thing I've learned is it takes 2 or 3 sessions to introduce a bill to finally get it passed. Rob knows this better than I do. I'm impatient. I want to see things moving. But a lot of it's educating, just simply educating people. What's the problem? What's the issue that has affected you, and why is it important for North Carolinians? So thank you very much. It's really great to see you. I hope to see you. Please come by the General Assembly when you can. Come to my office, 1109. You are who matter. Please keep it up. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Marcia.
Thank you. Who's next? Uh-oh, who's that guy?
Policy priorities from Rob Lemay.
Nice.
Uh-oh.
It's all you, Rob.
Troublemaker. So it is hard to do these. I do a lot of these Zoom calls, as so many of us do, but it's hard to be kind of a presenter and not actually interact with people. It gives me new sympathy for school teachers and other performers. So forgive me if I stumble around. So I'm Rob Lemay. I'm a lobbyist. People hire me to represent them in state government. But what's a little different for me when it comes to AFSP is I'm also a volunteer. I don't charge AFSP for my services. I lost my sister to suicide 6 years ago. Her name was Anna Marie, and she was wonderful. And I was looking around for a way to memorialize her, and was in a hearing room at the Child Fatality Task Force, which is this task force that gets together to talk about how to save children's lives. And they have this really weird committee called the Intentional Death Committee, which is all about suicide. And I was sitting in the Intentional Death Committee of the Child Fatality Task Force and realized that AFSP was the only organization that was doing suicide prevention work, not just for kids. There are a lot of people that are doing it for kids, but nobody's doing it for kids and adults and comprehensively. And so I've been volunteering for AFSP for the last couple of years. Some of you may know we got a bill across the finish line last year to require classified school employees to be trained to recognize the signs of children who are in crisis, including suicide. Took us a couple of years to get that bill onto the governor's desk and signed, but we got that done. And with your help, I'm sure many of you sent letters and made calls. I take tremendous satisfaction out of the fact that hopefully soon, when kids are coming back to school, that I think we all know the challenges they face as a result of the pandemic are not going to stop once they get vaccinated and the pandemic is over. They're going to continue to show signs of anxiety and other issues when they come back to school. And hopefully there'll be more people trained, more adults trained to see them and to recognize signs of crisis and help those kids and prevent tragedy. So if you were involved in that effort, thank you. It's been my pleasure to be involved in it too. Okay, so let's talk about what we're talking about with legislators this year. And these are prioritized, but we'll take a victory wherever we can. We've already talked about some gun policy issues. Representative Moore is really right. North Carolina is what I like to refer to as a challenging policy environment when it comes to safe gun storage and gun safety legislation. Very, very difficult political environment. And so then there are really, really good reasons for that. I won't read you these bullets, but firearms are very, very often involved in suicide. You probably know that, both instinctually, and you may know from your personal experience. And so we're just trying in this General Assembly to find a beachhead, find a little toehold where we can start talking, we can make a little bit of progress on this, because progress on firearm safety is really, really hard to achieve in the legislature right now. And what we've really focused on is, a couple of years ago, in the state budget, for the first time, some Republican legislators put some money in the budget to do education for folks around safe gun storage. And we have there's much more to be done on that issue, but whenever you have, when you ever have a little progress, you want to build on that. That budget was never approved because of some political difficulties between our governor and the legislature, but we're back at the budget process again, and we're going back to the same legislators who were supportive of that safe gun storage funding and trying to make sure that that's in the budget again this year. We're also we have long made the investment of behavioral health services, mental health services in our schools a priority. A lot of that is focused on school nurses and school counselors, people who are trained and have the specific professional responsibility to identify and respond to kids in crisis. We don't have enough of those kinds of professionals in our schools. There are specified ratios for the number of school nurses to the number of students and those are set by national standards, national behavioral health standards. North Carolina does not come close to meeting those standards. So we're asking that the General Assembly invest tens of millions of dollars in creating the funding for local school systems so they can create the positions and fund the positions so we can have mental health professionals in our schools. And of course, with the pandemic, it's so important. It's more important than it's ever been. And I'm actually kind of optimistic. We may not be able to get everything we want on this item, but I do think we're going to see an increase in school nurses and school counselors and other school-based mental health services this session. Fingers crossed. With your help, with all of us rowing in the right direction on the same direction on all of this. So there are, of course, we want to address suicide in all across North Carolina, but there are particular parts of this state and particular groups of people in this state that are at particularly high risk of suicide. Suicide rates are higher in rural areas. They are, and they're also higher in certain economic sectors of the economy. We have more suicides among retired service members, veterans, And we also have more suicides among agricultural workers, farmers. And what's interesting about that is that the North Carolina General Assembly right now, the majorities in both chambers, most of the many of the Republicans who control the chambers come from rural areas. Most of the urban areas right now are represented by Democrats, but out in the rural communities, the Republicans the Republicans that come to Raleigh to run the legislature, they largely come from rural areas. And so what we're hoping is that we'll be able to talk with them about the fact that their own constituents, the folks in rural areas and in the agricultural sector, are really at high risk, and ask them to put some money toward targeted prevention campaigns and targeted interventions to really try to reduce prevent suicide in those specific areas and those specific populations.
Now that we've got the facts and figures, we know how a bill becomes a law, we understand the importance of building relationships with our elected officials, and we've learned about our policy priorities, it's time to take action to create a world without suicide. Let's chat about how to safely speak out about suicide. You always want to make sure that you're listening to your mind and body and that you're in a safe place in your recovery. When telling your story or anyone else's story, avoid any details about the method used. Your goal is to educate and inspire hope. You also want your elected officials to look to you for mental health resources. And if they contact you about something that you're unsure of, we can always help you. And of course, practice, practice, practice. Practice in the car, practice in the shower, practice with your dog or cat, practice until you feel totally comfortable. I also want to cover some language do's and don'ts. A few phrases we need to avoid are saying someone committed suicide or somebody had a failed or successful attempt. So think about the times where you hear the word committed. Someone committed murder, they committed a crime. The reason we want to avoid using the word committed is because it has a negative association with breaking laws and doing bad things. If we continue to use the phrase committed suicide, we're going to prolong the stigma and less people will be likely to come forward for help. When you think about it, when someone dies from cancer, we don't say they committed cancer. We would say they died from cancer. So some phrases to use rather than committed suicide is they died by suicide, they ended their life, or he or she killed himself or herself. So let's go back to the failed or successful attempt. The reason we don't want to say successful attempt is because that means they ended their lives, but that's not a success to us or to anyone else. We also want to avoid saying it was a failed attempt because when you think about failing something, that's typically a bad thing. But in this case, we're happy that they're still alive and that we can help them. So rather than saying a failed or successful attempt, let's say they had a suicide attempt or they had a death by suicide. So this presentation is the first part of our state day. The second part is having discussions with your legislators. One of the easiest ways to talk to your legislators is through the AFSP Action Center, which you can find at afsp.org/Action Center. Our next slide will cover more on the AFSP Action Center. Another thing we'd love for you all to do is schedule to have a meeting with your legislators by Friday, March 26th. Most meetings are going to take place over the phone or via Zoom and are probably only going to take about 15 to 20 minutes, so you won't have to take too much time out of your day, and you won't have to go anywhere. You can schedule your meeting with your legislator by calling their office or by sending their office an email. I'll send you all a follow-up email tonight with information on how to reach out to your legislative office and what to say in your outreach to them. Share your connection to the cause through a vignette. I'll cover more on the vignettes in a couple of slides. We would also love for you to engage your community by recruiting other advocates. The more feet we have on the ground, the more change we'll see, and that'll translate to saving more lives, which is our ultimate goal. Lastly, promote suicide prevention on social media. You can tag AFSP National and AFSPNC, and you can also use the hashtags AFSP Advocacy, hashtag NCGA, and hashtag NCPOL, as well as tagging your legislators. So the Action Center is super cool because our national team will type up a message explaining a policy or funding that they're urging support for, and that pre-populated message will show up immediately for your use. So you're not having to explain any type of legislation or any type of a funding ask or anything like that. AFSP National Policy Team is going to take care of all of that for you. All you have to do is tell as much or as little of your story as you'd like, explain why suicide prevention is important to you, and click send. Just to give an example of how little effort and time it takes, AFSP sent out an action alert last week, and I was able to send emails to Senator Tillis, Senator Burr, and my personal representative, David Price, in about 30 seconds. I know the slide says you can email officials in as little as 2.5 minutes. It never takes me nearly as long as 2.5 minutes. It always takes about 30 seconds. Super easy. National team, again, they do all the work, so there's not a whole lot of work for you guys to do. And it truly does make a difference. For those of you who have heard about the 1-800-273-8255 or the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number, getting approval to switch to that 988 number, that's happening partially because there were so many action alerts sent from advocates all across the country in support of that. So your voice really does make a difference. So when it comes to speaking with your legislators, you're going to want to coordinate with the North Carolina chapter staff and or the Public Policy Committee in North Carolina. We would love to join your call or provide you with any specific information prior to your meeting, but we definitely want to know when you guys have your meeting scheduled so that, it's just on our radar. So when you're in your meeting with your legislator, you're going to want to introduce yourself and explain your connection to the cause. You'll want to highlight one issue that you really feel passionate about. You're going to want to share our chapter information, and then afterwards, you're going to want to send a thank you and offer to be a resource. So again, you're going to want to contact us before you schedule your meeting, and then also let us know afterwards how it went. And you can email me. My email address is on this slide right here. Again, I would love to hear about when you've got your meeting scheduled, and I want to hear afterwards about how it went. So when I send you guys that follow-up email tonight after this presentation, I will include a vignette template. So you can see the vignette on the screen right here. That is my personal vignette. It basically talks about my roommate who I lost to suicide and why I advocate for this cause. It's got my name, it's got my location, it has a little blurb about, why suicide prevention is important to me, and a little bit about my roommate, and then it has a picture of my roommate. So your vignette's going to look somewhat similar. You guys can personalize it. So again, you'll want to send a thank you email to your legislator, as well as your vignette after your meeting. You'll also want to share dates of upcoming chapter events, and you'll want to offer to be a resource and also provide contact information for the AFSP North Carolina chapter staff, as well as our lobbyist, Rob Lemay. And you can see both of the emails included on the slide that you can attach in your email to your legislator post-meeting. All right, so some final reminders. Don't forget to schedule your phone meetings to take place over the next 2 weeks, preferably by Friday, March 26th, and coordinate with the North Carolina chapter staff, so either myself, Sarah Cothren, or our area director, Catherine English, to have somebody attend with you or provide you specific information related to your district prior to your call. We want to make sure that you guys walk into your meeting with your elected officials with as much information and confidence as possible. So if you want to handle your meeting on your own, we can give you whatever specific information you need. If you would like to have somebody from our leadership team join you, we are more than willing to join you guys. You'll also want to complete a legislative meeting feedback form, which I will send those out in emails, in the follow-up email. You'll also want to send a thank you email to the legislative office. And be sure to check your email because we're going to send you information to use when scheduling your legislative meeting. So we've got the follow-up email that's going to go out to you guys tonight that'll come from me, and that's going to have, a bunch of fun stuff that you guys can use moving forward to schedule your legislative meetings. So, as the brilliant Leslie Knope would say, you've got this. And AFSP is here to support you guys. I'm here to support you. Rob is here to support you. Kenya's here to support you. Catherine's here to support you. You have so many people here to support you. So, we've got this. Let's do it. And of course, we're all in this together. I had to include a GIF of High School Musical because it is just so relevant. We are all in this together. We are here to support you. You have so many other fellow advocates that are here to support you. We're all pushing for the same type of legislative change, so we are all in this together. Thank you all so much for joining our 5th annual North Carolina State Capitol Day. We are so excited that you guys were able to attend, and we cannot wait to see all the amazing legislative changes that are going to come about because of our strong and dedicated and awesome advocates like you guys. So again, if you have any questions, concerns, please feel free to stay behind and chat with us. We're going to have a quick question and answer, and we are so excited to talk to you guys.